The hype around everything is so high that this is good because we get to see, hey, what's really possible. And if you want to do some of these crazy things that people talk about, this is the level that we're at right now of complexity. This is the reality of where we're at as businesses. Yeah. Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to AI in Motion. This is the only podcast that focuses exclusively on how businesses and business owners are practically using AI to grow their businesses so that they can focus more on growth and less on all of the other repetitive drudgery that we all have to do from time to time in our own businesses. And my special guest today is Lewis Carrasco. He is the head of product design at Motion, and he is an absolute veteran in the area of software design and project management. And I'm just so glad to have him here because he's going to help us, I think, understand a little bit more about how he's using and Motion is using AI, not just with their software package, but also just in general to help run their teams better. So, Lewis, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Good to be
Well,
here.
I have to tell you something before we get started. I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I realized that in that process that you came from Microsoft and that you worked on a couple of big projects there. You worked on Teams, and way back in the day, you actually led the team that developed Skype. Yeah.
Kind of backwards. I worked on Teams for a bit, almost since day one. I was there, kind of putting together the Teams platform, like that version one of the Teams platform that today it powers a lot of what Microsoft is doing with like automations and AI these days. It's wild because when I started with that team, it was pretty small, pretty small team, small number of users. And then through the pandemic, it just kind of, you know, it just went into a crazy amount. Like we started with like maybe, 100,000 users, 2 million users, 2 million users. All of a sudden, like a few years later, we had like 200 million users. And so kind of dealing with that craziness was pretty cool. And then I went to Skype. Skype story is a bit different. Skype is it's kind of everybody's first foray into like digital communication. Um, we used to have this saying that Skype was like your first love. We had like this first love theorem about Skype where people that use Skype for the first time used it in a very special way to like talk to their family that was really far away, talk to their grandparents. Me being an immigrant, that was a big deal for me. Like I moved from Venezuela, and like being able to talk to my grandparents back home and like seeing them was pretty special. So I was there with Skype for a few years, just trying to get the product back in shape. I left 2 years ago, came to Motion to work on like my real passion, which is time. I feel like I tell everybody here, like time is short, and we're all gonna die one day. Sounds morbid. But then you want to look back and you wanna see like, hey, what did I do with my time? Who did I spend it with? And what's like healthy? Like, did I spend my time properly? Did I extend my time on Earth? And so I wanted to do something meaningful with that, and that's kind of what we're doing here. And that's
Yeah,
why.
yeah. Well, it's funny because when I saw that you had worked on Skype, I worked overseas for several years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you talked about kind of the first foray into using technology like that, where you can physically see and converse with somebody, a lot like what we're doing here. And when I first started downrange, it's like 2004. All we had was MSN Messenger,
Yeah.
and so I would spend 6 months overseas and would never actually see a face or hear a voice of somebody that I loved. And when Skype came along, it was so transformational. It's like you said, it was so transformational, so revolutionary, and was really foundational in every other kind of similar technology. Like we record this through Riverside, that was kind of the basis for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like artificial intelligence is in that same vein, really it's transforming the way that we are going to cooperate and work, not just with our teams, but also with the AI agents and the workflows and processes. You've worked at both these big companies and also startups like at Motion. Like, what is it that some of the things that small teams and smaller companies are really missing about how they should be thinking about artificial intelligence and this new technology?
Oh, small teams. So, yeah, I feel like there's two questions in there. There's like, what are big teams? What are small teams missing? I feel like from a small team perspective, we're all understanding that is a force multiplier, right? It's a force multiplier. I think what we're starting to realize in the industry is how to use that force multiplier, right? So for example, my first instinct when I started playing around with AI was like, oh, I'm gonna have it write specs for me. Like, I don't, like that's
Yeah.
what I do. I write a lot of specs. Let me have it write specs for me. Well, turns out it's pretty crap that, to say the least. And why is it crap? Because that's where I add the value, right? That's where like all my experiences and my research, my understanding of how users use the product, that's where that comes in. And feeding a model that amount of context is pretty much impossible at this point in time. One, because I don't know where half the context came from, right? Like, where did my experiences come from? Where did I form these opinions? Half of the time, I don't even know where that comes from. And that's where the special sauce is. That's what makes a product feel authentic. And so what I ended up doing was like, okay, so I automated the spec writing and stuff. I'm like doing all the busy work instead of the important work. I'm like, wait a minute, I got this whole thing backwards. What should the AI be doing for me? It should be triaging my bugs. It should be categorizing my projects. It should be pestering people to update their tasks. It should be helping me schedule user interviews. It should be kind of doing all these things that really they're important, but my unique brain and experiences don't really add any value to those activities.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way my team and I, and even Motion, that's the way we're thinking about it. Where can the humans add the unique value, that authentic value? Then everything else, let's figure out how to help ourselves using like an AI employee or an AI workflow.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you said that, because when I started getting out of just basic like ChatGPT sort of prompting, and I really moved into more, I guess you call it agentic workflows. One of the things I tried to build, and I'm still trying to work on it, is some sort of repository of information where my clients, my team can go and get answers and can formulas and things that help me write sales copy or design marketing strategies, right? But I ran into the same problem that you've run into, and I'm glad to know you didn't find a solution for it, because I don't know where contextually a lot of my stuff comes from. I can't just put the documentation in there because so much of my lived experience is brought into the decisions that we make when we're designing those. And so, but I can do a ton in sort of reducing the amount of workflow that I have, that's pettiness or just time sucks that keep me from doing the work that's really important. And so, yeah. And so is there any difference between then the small teams and big teams, and how big teams should be thinking about it?
Yeah, big teams, I feel like they run into a slightly different issue. Not slightly, a big different issue. I feel like the big issue for big teams is how do you integrate AI into the existing product? So I'll give you one example, and this is an example with Microsoft. So I feel like Microsoft is kind of leading the way in many, many ways. I mean, I worked there from a lot of time and I love the company. They're leading the way in AI, they're leading the way in cloud, in how they're like serving these models to people. When it comes down to integrate, like how do you integrate AI into Word, right? People are used to using Word. How do you then put AI into these things and make it feel just delightful and make it feel like it just fits in? Maybe it's impossible. I don't know, right? It's very hard to do. And so what you've seen these big companies start to do is kind of segmenting the AI piece with the legacy piece, and so with the example of Microsoft, there's a wonderful new like Copilot app, right? And it also has documents. But then as a user, you're like, okay, do I use the Copilot documents? Do I use Loop? Do I use Word? Like, do I use
Yeah.
SharePoint? Like, what do I do now? And so these big teams, like I mean, I used Microsoft as an example, but like the big problem I see is like, how do you seamlessly integrate this new technology into existing products so that it just feels native? Like it has to
Yeah.
feel native. Like, I don't want to be like doing some work in this place and then moving to this other thing to do some work in that place and copy pasting from here to there, from here to there. It's just not an effective way to work.
Yeah, to your great credit, one of the things that Motion has now, and I want to focus more on stuff that you're doing outside of Motion, but one of the things they have now is documents.
Yeah.
And that's a brilliant concept, right? That's a way of taking AI inside of a platform that you're already using for project management and then placing inside of that all of the contextual information. One of the things I was reading earlier is that we're moving out of an era of better prompts and we're really moving into an era of better context where now we don't have to, we just need to be giving our AI agents, assistants, whatever we're using, the tools, we need to be giving them the context they need to produce better results. Would you agree with that concept?
Yeah, I feel like that's very, very true. I think the shift came with the thinking models. When the thinking models came about, the importance of a good prompt, at least for like consumery use cases, is not as important as figuring out what the correct context is. And sometimes, the AI isn't smart enough to figure out the context itself. But I'll give you an example. Like there's two examples. There's like the end user use case, and then there is like the developer use case. So for the end user use case, these models are getting so good, you can basically feed them whatever you want. They'll figure out what they need. They'll ask you questions. If they're missing context, they'll do a pretty good job. The interesting part is like what happens when you're putting together a workflow on a tool like N8N, when you're putting together, if you're a developer and you're building AI into your product, like how do you feed it the right context? So I'll give you an example. We're about to ship a new feature next week, hint, hint. And it's a Slack integration. And so the Slack integration works as follows. In any Slack thread, you put the ticket emoji, it reads the thread, it creates a task, puts it in motion. All good. Everybody's done that before. What's the special sauce? The special sauce is how do we assign it to the right person? How do we assign it to the correct project? Right? Person, easy. We're not a huge company, right? Like we have like 50 or so devs, and so we can have the AI pick from one of those, easy enough. Problem comes like how do you pick a project, right? So at Motion right now, you look at our workspace, we have probably like 1,600 projects in the workspace, right? Most of them are completed, most of them are old, but that's the amount of data we have. So how do you get smart enough to pick just the right project, right? Well, you gotta get smart because you're not gonna feed the AI 1,500 projects and like have it be any good at it. And so first you have to prune your data to give it just the correct context so it can make a good decision. Right? So just because we have this beautiful technology that can make decisions doesn't mean like you can give it crap data and have it make a decision with it. Remember, like every time you make a call to the AI, it's almost like you just woke up a brand new being.
Yeah.
No context of life. And imagine you hire a brand new person, right? And you do this Slack scenario. You press the button, you react with an emoji, and you're like, hey, brand new person, you've never met me before. Here's a thread. Here's 1,500 projects. Which project are you going to put that into? They have no idea, right? They have no idea. But if you're like, hey, here's the channel name. Here's the people that are part of the thread. Here's the projects where they have tasks assigned to them. Right? You give them a list of 10 projects with some weight saying like, hey, look, these 3 people are working on this thing, right? Then the AI can be like, oh, I'm gonna guess, but I can make a very good guess.
Yeah, but to your point, that's incredibly insightful. But to your point about big companies and how do we integrate, like you said, for Word, how do we integrate Gemini into something like that, right? I think that the way you're thinking about it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you're building and you're creating a connection with Slack, what you want is for the AI to feel seamless.
Yeah.
Like it's a part of both applications or it's moving seamlessly from one to the other. And the difficulty is just in how do we build that from a developer standpoint, from your side. But for the user side, what we want is for that to feel seamless.
Exactly. Like one key principle I tell my team, like when we're building with AI, imagine the AI is a coworker. Imagine the AI is a coworker. How do you make sure that coworker at that point in time has enough context, just the right context, to be able to make the decision that you would have made?
Mm-hmm.
Designed for that, right? And that's how I feel like we're going to be able to build amazing experiences. In fact, like some of our experiences already have this context in place, and this mechanism in place. And that's why I feel like they're pretty good, right? Like, for example, I don't know if you've used the AI note taker that we have.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's like any other note taker. It joins the meeting, it takes notes, it writes a summary, but then it also creates tasks, and it knows what projects you're talking about. It knows who to assign the tasks to, even if they're not in the meeting, right? It knows when the deadlines should be. And how does it know that? Well, we're very, very careful in how we like, massage the data in the background so that the AI knows exactly what to do. Right?
Yeah, no, and to that, so let's talk about this concept of AI not being a tool, because this is something that I've tried to repeat on this show. It's something that I tell my clients: stop thinking about AI like a tool, think it like a partner or an employee inside of the business. And once you that shifting in your thinking changes everything. Like you said, if you hired an employee and you told them how to do something, and you just told them to do something with no context, it's going to return you garbage, right? And if it returns you garbage, you don't just immediately fire them, right? You teach them, you train them, you give them the support they need, and then you correct them as you go, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that you have said is that you should build technology around human needs and then iterate quickly based on user feedback, which I completely agree with from a software development standpoint. And you have built a workflow for that actually kind of books interviews for you and then does research on the interviewee who's going to be coming in or the company, and then takes those participants and kind of creates an agenda out of it. And I thought that would be a really cool thing to kind of walk people through, although it's going to be somewhat heady. I think it's worth looking at just to give people an idea of where it's going and some of the things you can do with low code tools like N8N inside of your own business with just a little bit of understanding.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to walk you through that. I'll set a little bit of context. So, um, here in the product and design org in motion, there's five of us, and I love meeting with users. Like that is the most value that I can add. I meet with them.
You're the only
Visit them.
you're the only developer coder on earth, I think, that really likes talking to
Yeah, well, I
users.
mean,
It's
how
wild.
else are you gonna build that empathy to like build a great product for them, right?
I
So I
agree.
love meeting with our users, and I like my team to meet with them. Usually, I would right now we're averaging like 1.2 calls per day with a user, all up. I like my team to be meeting like 3 users a week. I think it's a good amount. Check in how the features are going. Is it solving your problem? What other problems you have? Just kind of get to
Mhm.
know them. It's not like the traditional like click here and like let me watch you. No, it's more like getting to know what problems they have, how we can solve them. And so like the scale of this at this point is five of us. 3 interviews per week. Like I have to be sending all these emails. I need to be building those relationships. I need to research the users right before the meeting so I can know them a bit better and not start from zero. Well, you can see this takes a lot of time now because the scale is getting bigger on our team as motion grows. And so I was like, hey, this spec writing thing didn't work out. Let me try out this whole workflow because hey, I don't necessarily add any unique value until we get to the actual interview. So I'll
Mhm.
show you how this works. There's actually two workflows. Half of it is in Zapier, half of it is in N8N. And let me click the button over here and show you both things. So the way this works, this is the flow that outreach like reaches out to users and
And
sends them
we're
a
in
personalized.
Zapier for right now, just for
We're in
clarity's
Zapier
sake.
right now,
Okay,
yeah. So
so
this
a
is
tool that most online, especially online
right.
businesses, are real familiar with.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So this reaches out to users. It sends them a personalized email, and it sends them a booking link so they can put time in my calendar or somebody on my team. This whole thing took me about probably a couple days to put together. A lot of trial and error. And
How
so
does it
I'll just
trigger? Just out of
um,
curiosity,
this
how
is
does it
triggered from
trigger
a
the?
Slack message. So
Oh,
if I post a Slack message to this specific channel, this is where like all my team is. So the product and design pod. If I post a message that starts with schedule user interview, colon, then this whole workflow starts. What comes after the colon? We use Amplitude as our data warehouse. And so before this, I figure out who do I want to meet this week? Do I want to meet users that use documents a lot? Do I want to meet users that are, I don't know, that are using the product wrong, right? So I go and make a query in Amplitude and I put the URL here.
Got it.
This is where it gets tricky. And this is like why these tools, I feel like, have not really taken off in a way that they should have. Because like, this is amazing. The fact that this tool can do this is amazing. But it really requires somebody who's probably been like an ex-dev, somebody with high resiliency, high IQ, and like just like the willingness to just like put up with all this, you know.
Well, creativity, right? Because I think people, if you don't work in that space, you don't recognize how creative you have to be at every stage to solve the problem. So
exactly. I'll show you a few examples of that as we go along. So, okay, I have to check that the message starts with a specific text, right? That step is called a filter. Why is it called a filter? I don't know why it's called a filter. Makes no sense, right? Took me like 20 minutes to like go online and figure out that that's what it was called. Right? Then I have to extract the URL. Right? So I grab the text, I extract the URL with a regex. Most people don't even know what a regex is, right? Why is that called a formatter? I don't know why that's called a formatter, but that's called a formatter, right? And so as I'm using these tools, and this was just to get a URL. I haven't even started the flow. Right? So get here. Then we start, hey, if there was a URL, go to path A. If there was no URL, go to path B and just say like, hey, you didn't send me the correct thing. Then I have to, okay, I have the URL. I have to go and grab this data from Amplitude. Right? So I have to make a HTTP request to download the data from Amplitude. But the way that this data comes back is funky because it comes back as a CSV. And so you send the request, then you have to pull a URL, be like, hey, are you done? No, are you done? No, are you done? No, are you done? Yes. Okay, now let me download from a different URL. And so that's not obvious. That's not something that like a regular person would know how to do.
Yeah.
And so what I end up doing is I just delay. Like instead of pulling, I know like, hey, these cohorts are small. I delay for a minute, and then I know most likely the response is going to be there. That's not robust, right? You can see that, you know, I'm doing a probabilistic. I think it's going to be done in a minute, but that's not robust, right? So that's pretty hard to do. I'll just kind of speed up through the rest of the things here. I have to get the CSV now, which is like an Excel file. I have to parse it. I have to set up a bunch of variables to keep state because I'm about to do a loop for every row in that CSV, which is a user. I need to make sure, this is again like setting variables so I can keep track of state. Then I find the record in, I have a little Zapier table. So FYI, if you're using Zapier, if you want to keep track of data over time, like this is a pretty good solution for that. I check that I have not recently contacted the user. So that's where I keep recently contacted.
That way you don't double up and keep emailing the same person over and over again.
Because a lot of the times, like people that are using the product well in one area are using the product well in another area. So there's a lot of overlap in these cohorts sometimes, and I don't want to be pestering the same user. If the record is not found in this table, then I get a random interviewer from my team. So this is my whole team. I grab one of us, and then I write an email from that person, from that random interviewer, to the user, right? A very unique message. So I have a prompt here. I'm using O3 Mini. Some people would prefer Claude. Claude is actually pretty good at writing. I like O3 Mini because it follows my instructions better. And
no, just on that note, just for everybody, I think the same thing. I think Claude may be better at writing, but I think with all the context and things that I already have in ChatGPT, that O3 just delivers me a better response to.
O3 Mini is by far like my favorite model right now. It was Gemini 2.5 for the first half, the first trimester of the year. but right now it's definitely O3 Mini. Um, then we send the email. We again take care of state. Hey, let's make sure that we track that we just sent email to this user. Then when we're done, again, this is not obvious. How do you exit a loop in Zapier? Well, you have to like do a filter. What the hell is that? Right? That's another 20 minutes wasted trying to figure out how this works. Um, then I grab all the list values that I just sent email to. So this is a local variable. So I can post to Slack, okay, guys, this is the users that we reached out to, how many there were, and what we're going to talk about. And so that way I have, I grab this from a Slack message, put it into a Motion doc.
So
So I know who I contacted for this cohort.
got it. So first, I guess first question I've got is this a unique problem to Zapier, or I know I've done a lot with a ton with Zapier, and I've done a little bit with Make. And what I've noticed is that Make.com is a little bit easier for workflows than something like Zap is. But I'm guessing that since you did build this in Zap, that Make wouldn't make much difference.
So I feel like they each have their pros and cons. Um, if you're really into this stuff and like you're automating your business with these tools, I feel like there's two strategies to follow. One strategy is just learn one tool really, really deeply, get really, really good at it, and suffer on the places where it's not good. Or you can learn all tools well, but not very deeply, and then get really good at picking out the correct tool for the thing you're doing. So for example, I learned through this experience that Zapier is not great at looping. N8N is. N8N is much better at looping. It's kind of built in. It does things in parallel very well. It does it does bulk stuff better.
Yeah.
Zapier is much better at doing like linear things that don't require like doing them in bulk.
Yep. Now, and again, I know we're going to look at the N8N. I just want to let everybody know, since I know that a lot of this, like if you're a business owner and we didn't lose you going through this, just understand that there's a reason I wanted him to show this to you, to understand where now the complexity lies and the difficulty lies in the kind of automations that we're going to see, but that there aren't the tools that are built for this yet, for folks like average business owners who don't understand this, who don't have a developer on staff, who don't have somebody like Lewis who's got decades of experience doing this. But N8N is kind of a low code tool that you'll see in a minute, that is a kind of a step above this, a little more advanced, and is designed for building more customized AI agents and workflows.
Yeah, so let's jump to that. So
Yeah.
this is half of my workflow, right? So this takes care of sending the emails with user interviews.
And all we've done is send an email here.
All we've
And
done
this
is
is, does this, I mean, this frustrates you obviously as a developer. Is there any advice that you would give to somebody who wants to do something similar to this inside of their business, but doesn't have this level of expertise and time to devote to figuring this stuff out?
Don't do it. Hire somebody. No, but like speaking real, for real, if you have the resiliency, I would get into these tools as kind of like a weekend project. Get familiar with them. One of the things that I like to do is have a ChatGPT window next to this, and as you get blocked, just take a screenshot of the error, give it to ChatGPT. It'll help you figure it out way faster than you would. So putting these things together, the most frustrating part is figuring out like what's going wrong, figuring out like, hey, I want to loop. How do I loop? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, how did I figure out how to exit this loop so I can send this Slack message to my team with all the users? Well, I struggled with it for like 40 minutes trying to Google it. And then I was like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? And I screenshotted my flow. I gave it to O3 and I'm like, hey, how do I exit this loop? And it's like, oh, you need to use a filter. I'm like, well, Okay, no way, no shit. I wasn't gonna figure this out, right? But it knew.
Well, I don't even know if most people know that you can do that. I had an old a computer that I hadn't used for a long time, for a couple of years in the basement. It was a PC, and I was going to give it to my daughter for next year for her senior year of high school so she could use it. And I was trying to erase everything and reboot it normal, and I got to a stage where I didn't know what to do. And the instructions that I had originally got from the internet wasn't what I was seeing on the screen. I literally took a picture of it, jumped it into ChatGPT and says, what do I do next? And it literally told me step by step what I needed to do. It was incredible what even the basic technology will do now.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think that is an instinct that every human is going to develop over the next maybe 2 to 5 years. So take advantage of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you can, if you're listening to this, like you can get one step ahead literally by just doing that right now. In the next 2 years, everybody's gonna know how to do that.
Yep.
So take advantage of it now.
Yep. Yeah, let's look at the N8N workflow now.
Yeah,
too,
so
and take a look at
N8N.
that.
So okay, when to use Zapier really quick. Use Zapier
Yep.
if you're doing like linear flows, and Zapier is more mature, so it will have better integrations a good percentage of the time. So it's a little bit easier to use in that case. So let's talk about user interviews. So the way that this is set up, so again, to talk you through the use case.
Mm-hmm.
If I have my way, every week, my team and I will show up to work, and we will have these user interviews scheduled on our calendar, right? Now I don't have to do anything. I just show up and they're scheduled on my calendar. Oh my God, it's like I have an extra employee on my team doing stuff for me that I didn't want to do. Amazing. Okay, so now I show up on Monday, and let's say I'm meeting Jason and Harry. Who the hell are they, right? Like, I want to know. Well, this is hard now because I didn't send out the emails. It was an automation sending out the emails. But I still want to know who I'm meeting and what they do and who they are, at least at a high level. Mm-hmm. And so what this does is it looks at a Google Calendar. So I schedule all the user interviews in a particular Google Calendar called Motion User Interviews. So that way I don't have to filter out events. Again, if this was fully agentic, this could just be on my calendar, and I would be able to figure out based on the meeting name what is and what is not a user interview. But hey, easier like this. Again, like each of these steps, each of these tools has gotchas everywhere. I'll give you one. Here, I want to see the events for today. Well, today is a concept of time, and time is weird because the earth rotates. And so what is even today? Well, I need to make sure that it's today for everybody in my team, which happens to be from the East Coast to the West Coast. So what's the easiest way to do that? Well, I run this every morning at 6 a.m. and then I add 20 hours to it. And that should capture the East Coast and West Coast. But that's not obvious, right?
No, and I have to stop you because this is, I mean, again, as a guy who has no coding experience and is basically kind of like copying, pasting JSON code into N8N to do what I wanted to do, I built an agent that would schedule events for me and move stuff around. Yeah. And what I had done was I had put in, the time is, I'd given it some instructions that said, when you're referencing the time and date, the time is now, which is the code that you have in there, I think, right there in the after. Yeah. Well, it was putting it 2 or 3 hours earlier, and I couldn't figure out why it was. And I was on a call on a business partner meeting yesterday, and the coder that we had on staff, he's like, I'll bet where the server is hours different than you, and you just need to tell it like the UTC time. Yeah. And that fixed it.
Yeah. But it's not obvious, right? Like
it's not
creativity,
obvious.
You have to be resilient. You have to be able to like get rejected by the tool so many times and then still keep going, right? Because this is basically what happens.
Well, and I got to say that again, that goes back to the level of creativity that's still needed in order to build these agents and make them work. And at this place we're at now, I think one of the important things about this show is not just talking about all the amazing things like, Gemini 2.0 just came out with their new video and audio stuff, which is incredible, right? but the hype around everything is so high that this is good because we get to see, hey, what's really possible. And if you want to do some of these crazy things that people talk about, this is the level that we're at right now of complexity. And that'll come down over time. But for right now, this is the reality
It's the
of where we're
reality.
at as
Like,
businesses. Yeah.
if you're like me, half of your feed on like Insta, TikTok, YouTube, it's people building all these really cool workflows and then telling you, oh, it took me an hour to build. Bullshit. It did not take them an hour.
Yeah.
There
It's
is no
all
way it
lies.
took them an hour to build. So I wish this step was not necessary. I wish here I could just say today. Like, why do I need to do? I should be able to say today. Like, give me the events for today. Anyway, that's where we are. Here's where it gets tricky. So this is where N8N is much better than Zapier, in my opinion. When you're passing data around, remember we were talking about how do I give the AI the correct context, right? How do I give it the correct context? The AI step is all the way back down here. Again, this is I didn't build an agent. This is just a workflow that happens to be using a GPT model to make some decisions for me. Everything before all these steps is me preparing the data for the agent, well, for the model, right? I get my Google Calendar. All of this is to prepare the data for this guy over here. So how does that look like? Well, I grab Google Calendar data. Google Calendar comes back with this massive amount of data, like all kinds of fields about the event, all kind of, that's just gonna confuse my GPT over here. So I have to parse the data. I have to write some fucking code to parse the data to only get the fields I care about, which are meeting name, who's attending the meeting, and what's in the description.
Is that something that ChatGPT could help you write if you just told it, hey, is there a way for it to know if you just said,
Yeah.
here's the stuff out of the calendar that I need to get access to, write me code that'll do that?
Yeah, so kind of. So in my experience, this might be different for other people. There's two ways to do it in N8N. One is there's this magic like block code. I forget what it's called. And what it does is you give it instructions in English, and then it writes the code for you.
Got it.
It works 15% of the time.
Like you said, there's pitfalls everywhere.
Everywhere. It works 15% of the time. If you see all my workflows in N8N, this is the only time that I've been able to make it work. Every other case, what I do is I take a screenshot of what's in here, the input. I usually like put it in the JSON tab. I take a screenshot of that. Then I go to Claude because it's a little bit better at code. And I ask it, hey, can you help me write JavaScript to extract this and this and this and this and put it over here, right? Or, hey, can you dedupe this array with that array and put the data over here in this format? And so there's always that step. You end up having these little code steps everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now let's talk about these right here. So when I want to meet a user, I want to know, hey, are you using a lot of projects? How many concurrent projects are you running? Are you using tasks? Are you auto-scheduling your tasks? And so all these are HTTP blocks that query my Metabase instance for data about that user. So I'm basically doing a little bit of telemetry, a little bit of data science, quote unquote, to figure out about this user. So
all of those are HTTP calls to the information you have on that particular client or user, and extracting just the information that you want the AI to reference when doing its stuff. Okay.
Exactly. So again, kind of a little bit of a pain in the butt. I had to go grab the user ID, the team ID. Then I have because each of these is basically a little chart in Metabase. And so I had to do it one by one. Okay, gotcha number 2 in N8N is the way that N8N passes data around is weird. It's weird in a really good way that has one bad consequence. So remember when I told you that N8N is really good at batch, at like, looping stuff, at bulk operations. If I have, for example, out of Google Calendar, I have 5 meetings, right? This little arrow right here is going to show you 5 items. That means that this block is going to run 5 times, right? That means that
one for each instance.
One for each instance. So let's play this out. I'm going to show you why I use these 2 blocks. So let's play this out. So, okay, I have 5 out of here, which means 5 out of here, which means 5 out of here, which means 5 out of here. Okay, so far so good. Each of these is going to run 5 times. Imagine these were not in parallel, but they were in sequence, right? I go and grab the tasks, right? For one team out of 5. Say this team has 10 tasks. What is the output of this line now?
25?
It's 50, right? Because 50. I have 10 tasks and 5 teams, so I have 50. So
well, math is not an exact science, Lewis, so...
Right? Yeah. So then say I have projects right after team tasks, right? And say I have 2 projects. So 50, I run this 2 times. What is the output of this?
Is that 100 then? Because it's 100,
yeah, right? So 100. If I didn't have this block and this block, what happens when I get to the AI agent? It's going to run 100 times. So I'm going to be making 100 calls to ChatGPT. If you're using a thinking model like O3, it's just going to barf on you. It's just not going to work. So what do we do here? I merge the data from all these 4. So this block allows me to wait for this, wait for this, wait for this, wait for this, put them all together. It merges them and then aggregates them into a single object. Right? Merging would still be the addition of this line plus this line plus this line plus this line. So it'll still have, hundreds of things here. Aggregate grabs all those 100 things, puts them into one object. So then you can grab that object, give it to GPT. So when you're doing these flows, make sure that the line that's going into your agent, which in this case is not an agent, but the line going into your agent is the number of things that you actually want to send to the agent. Most of the times it's one thing because, hey, you massage your data, you grab all your data, you want them to make a decision on that data. So usually you do have to do kind of this step before you get there, unless you actually want to run like one step per, right? Like one agent question.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is if you remove the merge agent and you remove the aggregator and you just took all 4 of those and ran them directly into, in this case, what it's called the AI agent, it would be too complex really for the AI to be able to do anything with that information?
No, what I'm saying is it would run, I want to make one call to ChatGPT to ask it, hey, who am I meeting today? Summarize. So like if I look at my prompt here, what I want them to do is I want them to look at everybody I'm meeting today and all the info about them and just summarize them into something that looks like this. Right? So I want a large amount of data summarized. If I don't do the aggregate step, it's gonna do, instead of like grabbing all that large amount of data is going to be broken up into tiny little pieces that come from each of these lines. So it's going to run the agent once per little piece. And so it's not going to produce anything useful for me.
Okay, so it just doesn't produce, it's not a cost issue. It's just the fact that what you're going to get back is not going to be useful for you.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. Well, one of my questions that I had for you is, and I appreciate you showing that to us. And I know guys, it's kind of heady stuff and we try not to get too technical here, but I wanted to show you guys what the reality of it is, what the reality of AI is, because he's exactly right. I go onto YouTube and 3/4 of my feed are all these young guys in their 20s who are telling you the 3 AI agents you can make today to sell for $1,500 a pop. And it's nonsense. Like I've been in there, it doesn't work like that. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. And if you're a business owner and you're looking to put any kind of significant capital behind designing this stuff, you need to understand the reality of the situation. And so again, Lewis, one of my questions for you on the list that I think we've kind of answered here is, most people still do this stuff manually. And what has been the major hurdle to adoption? Now, technical expertise is obviously one, but are there others? Are people worried about turning over data? Are there other hurdles that you encounter?
I think the data privacy is a big concern. You know, grabbing data from one tool, fitting it onto another tool, getting it back is scary, right? Like say
Mhm.
you're a doctor's office, like you can't be doing that with your patient's data. Say you're working on like a top secret R&D project, like you don't want to do that kind of stuff. But most businesses are not like that, at least like small and medium-sized businesses. For them, it's a matter of, well, first, not knowing that the tool exists. Second, you know that tool exists. This looks alien.
Mhm.
Like this just looks absolutely alien to you. And third is, in this last workflow that I showed you, I was stringing together a few different tools, right? I was stringing together Google Calendar. I was stringing together Metabase. I was stringing together Slack.
Mhm.
So I'm like grabbing data from one place, putting it into another place, hoping that it works, right? That's a big hurdle. Like just passing data around is the second big hurdle. And the third big hurdle is like, look how hard this is to put together. Like
Yeah.
all I want to do is I want to type, hey, every day at 6 a.m., get all the events for today from this calendar. Then go and make these 4 Metabase queries, grab all the data that you see here, summarize it, and now send it to Slack. I should be able to put 10 bullet points. Just like imagine I had an intern, right? How would I tell them to do this thing? I would give them enough info. Of course I would. But I wouldn't give them like an N8N workflow, right? I would give them a bullet point list of the things that they need to do. They should be able to do it. I wish that tool existed.
And
Uh,
so to that point, I think that what you just showed us, yeah, you're scheduling, interviews with people who are users, but that workflow has so many different variable or variations of it, right? You could use it for your sales team. So your sales team
yeah.
didn't have to worry about following up with emails or scheduling demos or any of that stuff. So literally they could be spending all of their time just on sales calls with people who were pre-qualified in order. I think about Salesforce, the way Salesforce did it for years. I don't know if they still do it the same way, but they had setters. And the setters, if you said you were interested in Salesforce, you didn't talk to a sales rep, you talked to somebody who pre-qualified you before you ever went and talked to the sales rep, right? That meant that they could hire really good closers and have them doing nothing but closing all day long. You can do something similar inside of your business today using the workflow that you just showed. It's just incredibly frustrating and difficult to build. Do you know, is that just the way it's going to be? And we're going to, the people who know how to design these sort of workflows and agents are going to monopolize it and sell all of the rest of us a product that we have to pay for? Or is somebody come up with a tool that can actually do what you just talked about, summarize a task that needs to be done, and then have them go do it?
Yeah, I think there's a few prerequisites. I don't think that this can't be the future. Like I refuse to believe this is the future. No way. In fact, like I feel like half of part of me thinks like the whole reason for SaaS is because hey, we need a easy way to do this kind of stuff. So somebody like, hey, put Salesforce together and it does most of the things that a sales team needs to do. Not some of them well, some of them not well, but at least it gets you through, right? And it allows you to do the things you need to do. These kind of workflows are allowing businesses to do like more bespoke kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, now I get to say exactly how I want this thing done. But I do see, in the not too long term, a way to put these things together a lot easier. And I feel like there's two necessary things in the recipe to make this work. One, I think you have to kind of own the data. If you're relying uh, on other tools to pull the data from, it's really difficult to do, right? Because it might not be complete, it might not be in the right format. One of the key things for these workflows is, for example, if they're going to be truly agentic, how do you pull the right data, right? How do you pull the right data? What does that mean? That means that the way that you store the data in the background has to be vectorized in a way that when the workflow runs based on like, bullet points from a user, it should be able to infer what data it needs to go grab.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that unless the data is in your system. You can approximate it if the data is not in your system, but you can only do it well if the data is in your system. So
Got it.
prerequisite number one is kind of own the data, which means you kind of have to have a suite, right? So like Microsoft Office, Google Cloud, like you have a suite where people
But you have to
have
have your own, right? That's what you're saying. Because I
your
only
own.
half understood what you just said to me, but I think what I understood was that you've got to have your own system, almost
Yeah,
operating off of your own
you have to be
platform. Does that mean
operating.
building your own LLM
No,
internally?
that just means building like your own document storage, your own
Okay.
table storage, your own, right? So users like, hey, if a user, say a user, has a ton of files,
Mm-hmm.
right? If the user has to go grab those files from Google Cloud, put them into Zapier, well, that doesn't work well, right?
Yeah.
Because how does your workflow in Zapier know exactly which files to pull?
Yep.
Um, you have to do a search, but then search is not good enough.
Yep.
You want to do agentic search, but then Google Cloud doesn't allow you to do that. And so it's, I feel like to do this well, you have to have the platform where the data is kept. And then the second recipe is you have to have workflows that can be built using natural language. As if I could imagine I have an employee, and that employee, I'm giving them instructions. Of course, the instructions have to be good enough.
Right.
Um, and then it just executes, right? So you have to have both things to be able to put together a tool that does all these things that I just showed you today,
Mm-hmm.
but that every small, medium-sized business can use, just like out of the box.
How far away from something like that do you think we are? Because if you'd have asked me in 2023, in fact, many people did, and I was telling my clients, I said, AI is garbage for creating content. It's don't use it. It produces trash and it sounds dead and soulless. It's 2 years later. That's not true anymore.
Yeah.
Like I can program it to write in my voice. I can
Yeah.
tell it, I can give it detailed instructions. I can give it samples of all of my writing, and it can produce something that is very difficult for even me to tell whether I wrote or not. So are we a year or two away from something like this, or do you think it's farther than that?
I think it's closer than that. I
Yeah.
think it's closer than that. I've seen even what Zapier is doing. It's pretty interesting what N8N is doing. All these flows that you saw me show you can now be done in a more agentic way by building an agent, giving them the tools. So like all those little blocks that you saw, could I use them as tools, giving them to the agent and had the agent reason over them. There's a good reason I didn't build it that way. It is because I need predictability. Um, and I do think that there is a world where it's weird to say, right? Because if I'm running a business, I need predictability. Um, Agents, like a fully agentic flow, does not give me that predictability.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's a big space for workflows like the one I just showed you. And there's also a space for agentic stuff where like, hey, I can ask it to do whatever I want. But most of the time, at least that we found as we build these things in motion, is we want that predictability more than not. And so we end up building workflows instead of agents for most of use
Yeah.
cases.
Okay, that makes sense. And that kind of goes to my last question is that if you're, say, a 20-person team or you own a 20-person team and you are trying to figure out, you recognize that you're going to have to bite the bullet, that this is coming and you're either going to change or you're going to die, right? Because you're not going to be able to be competitive without it. And you're saying, okay, I want to invest a little bit of time and money and attention to this. Where do you recommend people start with that? What are the tools, I guess, they should be using or looking at or learning right now? And then what sort of workflows should they be starting with? I know it's kind of a broad question, but
Yeah, I would say there is a few startups out there that have N8N like tools that are a little bit easier to use in some ways, a little bit harder in others. So people like Lindy, are doing this kind of stuff. I would start with N8N though, if you're learning. And I would start with something very, very, very simple. Like, look at your calendar. One of the things that I like, at least about Motion, is because we track all of our tasks in Motion. It was very easy for me to go into my calendar and look at, okay, what are my recurring tasks? Okay, what are my recurring tasks that I don't like to do? Okay, which one of those do I think will be simplest to start with? And then I started on a weekend. Like, you can't start, I would recommend, don't start on a weekday. Like, do it on the weekend. You start on a weekday, it feels like work. You're going to hate it. You're going to get frustrated. Think of it as a fun little project that you're doing. Like, imagine you went and you bought like a Lego set and you're assembling a Lego set and you're just kind of doing this for fun. Start there. Have a ChatGPT window on the side. I would use O3 for this. 4.0 is good, but it's like a little bit too verbose. So I would use O3. Claude 4 is actually pretty good at this too. So one of those I would use. Put it on the side. Open up N8N and just ask, hey, I want to automate this thing. How would you do it? And start from there, right? These tools are able to actually give you the code that you can copy paste into N8N to start out with that workflow. I would recommend at this moment in time, don't do it. It's just going to confuse you more than it's going to help you. Okay. But do follow the steps. Just follow along. Oh, the first block is this block. Okay, let me go find the block, put it together. You get blocked, take a screenshot, be like, hey, I don't know what to do here. What do I put in this field? And it'll tell you what to put in that field. And you put in that field, you see what it does. You put the next block. And I would start like that. Okay. I would make 1 or 2 workflows like that, or just things for you. Like, don't start with anything for your team. Just something for you. Make it very simple. Once you're comfortable, familiar with it, then, okay, what is something I can do for my team? Something small, right? Because you're going to need that predictability. You're going to need the reliability that you know that it works well every time. Yeah. And just start like that. Start like that. And then you'll end up like creating these monstrosities. Like, I have some monstrosities these days that do pretty complex stuff and are kind of saving us time for one. But 2 is what you end up finding is, as you save time by using these workflows, your brain just starts thinking of workflows that are not saving time, but like legit adding value. Like, you start doing things that you kind of always wanted to do, but you've never done. And they add a ton of value to your team. And so that's when it starts getting really interesting, right? Because that's when it stops being like just a multiplier on just an addition on your time. Like, oh, I got 2 hours back. Okay, I'm going to use those 2 hours. No, now it's like a real multiplier, right? Because you're using those 2 hours to do something that you weren't doing before.
Yeah, no, it's so exciting to me to be on the very front end. I feel like we're in the era of like the 1995 of the internet, or when people first started coding up websites and you needed to know how to write HTML. And we're going to eventually get to a place where it's no code, it's drag and drop, it's contextual, like normal language of just like working with another real human being. And it really is going to transform it. And I think the sooner people start learning about it, the better. But thank you so very much for coming on the show today, Lewis. I really appreciate it. I learned so much. And hey, if you're still here, it's for one of 2 reasons. Either you're an absolute nerd and you geek out on this stuff like Lewis does, or it's because you are a business owner who is deeply fascinated about where AI is going and you want to know more. And if you are looking for a super simple way just to dip your toe in the water and start seeing how these sort of processes work, a great way to do that is using Motion. Guys, they have an incredible program, keeps all your documents, your projects on task, keeps everybody in the team looped in. They have all kinds of AI stuff that they're working where they'll take all the notes and then they'll allow you to sign it to specific people on your team when you have meetings. It is just a full suite. It's a powerhouse for your team. It's a powerhouse for your company. And it's a great way to dip your toe into the world of AI and software. So check them out. There is a link in the description for a free trial. So you got no reason. Go check it out for free. And then don't forget to like and subscribe, because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I did something right. And we will be back for another episode very soon. Until then, be safe, be good. I will talk to you then.